Welcome to Pixel Theater, everyone, a podcast dedicated to film adaptations of video games. I am one of your hosts, Nick Noel.
Hello, and I am Ron Stratton, formerly known as Doom Guy. That's a lie. I've never been called Doom Guy.
Well, hey, we wouldn't have known. You could have made it up.
I could have wrote that out.
I think it's
There's no
very
Wikipedia
interesting.
for us yet.
It's interesting how that main character doesn't have a name. Like, because there's no one for him to interact with. Like,
yeah.
I think it would be interesting if just like they had a cutaway to like his driver's license and it just says like John Davidson, and we're like, okay, finally we know. But
Joe Mylanta.
Because it's like there's no dialogue. It's not like there's not even a story. It's just, hey, you're trapped on Mars and there's these demons. It's just like, I didn't even know.
It's a weird aspect of the two new games because Doom 2016 really plays into that.
Wait,
like,
Ron, before I go into it, we need to tell people what movie we're doing.
Oh, yeah, we'll go for it. I think they can probably guess.
Yeah. So this is our last October series, I guess. I think it's going to it might be right at the end of October, maybe going into November. It's going to finish out our scary video game series, and we're going to do Doom Annihilation.
Die, die, die! What is going on?
They opened up a portal down.
A straight-to-video DVD
Sad
release.
thing.
But anyway, so you were talking about Doom 2016.
Oh, I was just referencing the Doom Guy name. It's interesting because Doom 2016, like, there's no hint to who's behind the helmet. But in Doom Eternal, they really go heavy on the story, and they show him without his helmet a lot, and you can see his face. And it's like, it's interesting they would go that much into a character who's still just called Doom Guy.
Yeah, they go that much into the character without ever saying what his name is.
Well, I'm sure there's some wiki, but I don't know. I can't remember.
It's kind of like Master Chief in Halo. Like, he's just got a random name.
And it's important, though. Okay, well, that's John Spartan to you, sir.
Oh, did they change it? Did they change it eventually? Okay.
I don't know. Well, he's Master Chief.
No, wait, no.
But is
his name John Spartan? Because John Spartan, are you sure? Because that's the guy from the Demolition Man. That's Sylvester Stallone.
You are right. God, am I confusing that? Master Chief is a fictional character, petty officer, John 117. Wait a minute. Maybe that's where I'm getting the John from.
Yeah,
I can just feel.
See, guys, we're learning things all the time, and our old mid-30s brains are slowly deteriorating, and just all the pop culture we absorbed when we were 14 is just melding together.
No, it's John Spartan 117 is the Master Chief.
So
Master
they
Chief
named him after the Demolition Man.
I'm guessing so.
Good to know. I don't know. I think if Halo came out in like 87, he probably would have been played by Sylvester Stallone.
Oh, probably.
Anyway.
Hey, we gotta get the flood.
Well, he doesn't talk. That's where it would come in handy. So.
Oh, that's true. How you doing, man? Let's talk about this ridiculous movie.
Yeah. Okay. So Doom Annihilation. This came out last year, and I had no idea it existed because it was straight to DVD.
I think you only knew this came out if you read like the IGN forum.
Like the only people who know this came out are people doing podcasts about video game movies. Like that's it. I was trying to find like any kind of information about it, and the only thing I can find is that the estimated domestic video sales was $74,000 for this movie.
Well, that's optimistic.
Yeah, so that's not great. Just so people know,
that's not good at all.
Movies usually cost more than that.
Well, without being a dick, do you think the budget was much more than that? Like, how much do you think they really spent on this?
I mean, it's hard to say, but like, you know, they had spaceships and like night shots. It would be hard to make this under 6 or 7, maybe 10, something like that, million.
Yeah,
that's still like really low budget.
I knew we weren't in good shape when the beginning. I mean, the title, it was still cutting away to the title sequence, but the scientist guy walks through doors that you could just tell were cardboard. They just had that like the PAs are behind them opening it.
It's a real Star Trek the original series kind of vibe to it. Just
Oh
like
yeah,
somebody behind
definitely,
there's
definitely.
opening those doors.
Not, I mean, again, it's one of those movies. I don't know how much I'm gonna repeat myself based off the last Doom movie, but it's not. Uwe Boll would be really proud to call this his, and
Yeah,
there's
it's a
nothing
great
cynical about
Uwe
it.
Boll
It's a
movie.
great Uwe Boll. I've never said his name the same the whole time we've been doing this.
I think it's
That
Uwe.
guy. Yeah, Uwe. Uwe Boll would dream to make a movie like this. Just skipping a bunch of junk real quick. I want to jump to my only real positive. It missed every single mark, but the ending was beyond their abilities ambitious, and I give them points for that. Because once she's there and she's surrounded by more demons than I thought they could afford in a CG capacity, and a kind of neat looking set, I was like, this is cool. This is more than any Doom property has attempted so far. We were talking about before we recorded, like they weren't allowed to use anything of current day Doom. And it's weird how both attempts at Doom have disregarded the most popular aspect of Doom, and they just latch on to Doom 3 in that setting, in that story, in that style. Like, all right, we're just gonna make that as a movie. And I guess that's just a cop out. It's just the easy way to do it because that is such a cinematic chapter in the series. They're like, yeah,
so
cool, we can rip that up.
Which aspect do you mean?
Well, just the setting, the introduction of the scientists, and they're working on portals, and everything's jump scare based, and you really just focus on the imp and zombies. This is really zombie heavy. I give this movie the award for taking the weakest zombie attack onslaught in cinema history, which is like in Resident Evil 1, when they're all just backed up in that warehouse and they're just coming at them. They decided to make that an entire movie with this because that's what it felt like. And so they just glom onto scientists and lab coats who are zombie demons and imps in a way that was such a minor aspect of what we all know as Doom. Doom needs to be that. Doom needs to be just a meathead with a helmet on destroying shit. And I know that doesn't translate to a film very well, but that's what Doom is, like
it's funny how there are basically two components to the Doom story, if you will, like if you want to be generous, and that is it is on Mars and there are demons, and no adaptation of Doom has taken has been able to put those two elements into it.
At least, I mean, this one does kind of center on Phobos, and that is important in the games. But again, Doom takes place on Mars.
Yeah.
And they think they're being cute by going, well, Mars is over there, but we're on the moon of Mars. And
I will say it's the only time I've ever seen the name justified, or at least attempted to be justified, because even the games are just like, I mean, it's Doom because he's doomed.
Yeah, you're doomed. This one at least makes it part of the story.
This is like, they said Phobos is the doomed moon. I guess, was there one, although that doesn't come up at all. Like, it is it's just to justify the title.
Let's get the title in somewhere.
Doom. That's it.
And then they bring up Annihilation. So they worked in both aspects of the title, and yay for them.
Which is, I think, the main thing that movies need to do,
They really
do.
Steel Magnolias. You got to have that Peter Griffin moment where he goes, they said the title. Like, that has to happen.
Yeah, exactly. I think, I might have said this before, but I think it was Paul Thomas Anderson, when he was asked about the title for There Will Be Blood, and it's just like, what is that? Like, nobody even says that in the movie. And he's just like, yeah, because I hate that. Like, whenever I hear the title in the dialogue, I just turn immediately and go, that's the name of the movie. Like,
I just went down this whole path while you were talking about that. If Paul Thomas Anderson had done the Resident Evil movies, and we may have already talked about that, but that's a great alternate reality I'd love to see.
I do wish, like, you know how like remakes don't happen that often, or they do, but like it's never with like movies you'd want to happen or anything really fun. They usually remake successful things. When really they should remake things that had a good premise but couldn't be like done yet.
Yeah.
So I think it would be interesting though if they just like had different directors like remake each other's movies. Like, what does oh god, what's the guy who did Resident Evil? It's something Paul W.
Paul
S.
W.S.
So what if Paul W.S. Anderson and P.T. Anderson just swapped movies, and we see Paul W.S. Anderson's Punch Drunk Love and P.T. Anderson's Event Horizon? Like, that would be weird.
Just a lot of Mila Jovovich kicking people in a supermarket.
Yeah, exactly.
That'd be interesting. So this movie does carry on the time-honored tradition of sci-fi films in like some factory they got a permit to be in, or some friend owns. Oh, yeah. And I love that there's even a line of dialogue. Doesn't some guy say like, "What is this?" Yeah, and they're like, "Oh, don't you know they need water here?" or something.
This movie, a lot of the dialogue in this movie is justifying the things that are happening in the movie. Like, I know this doesn't look very sci-fi, but hey, even spaceships need water treatment or something. Like, and it's just like, yeah, but why is that the only place we're going?
It's very apparent. You look at like Aliens, and the crew had like military exercises together to kind of bond and form a relationship. And you can just tell all of these guys just watched Aliens and just thought that was enough. Really awful sci-fi marine crew here. Like
it's not even like
it did not work.
Like, they're all generic. I don't remember anyone's name except the main character, Jane Dark, I think. And the only reason I remember
going for
it
a Joan of Arc thing.
I was looking her up later to figure out what the hell was going on with this movie. And also, because while I was watching it, Lauren noticed that she pronounces her R's really weird, and we're like, she's not she's not American, and we realized she's Scottish, so that's why she sounds so strange.
She gave probably my the best performance. I liked her as like the protagonist. You know, Amy Manson. Yeah. I was blanking on that. She was good. I didn't mind her, and I liked like the guy. He telegraphed his whole message to his family, like, "Oh yeah, you know this guy's going out." I just love his whole. I'm 2 weeks from retirement, and I just bought a boat, and I'm having to spend more time with you, honey. Like, of course he's gone.
You know, but that's another thing where it's just like, I thought he was gonna be the main character, maybe, or
he had Doom Guy chin going pretty good. Like, you could see that guy on a HUD element,
like the shotgun and stuff, and we're like, okay,
yeah,
because like it's one of those things where like shotgun doesn't make any sense for a space marine, but whatever.
No. That's time honored from Cameron. Yeah, everyone's got to have that for Close Encounters.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, like, you know, so in the first 45 minutes, like half the cast dies because they can't afford them for longer, would be my guess. In, like you were saying, a very weak zombie ambush, like there's like at any point like 3 zombies maybe on screen, and it just wipes out a whole like half a squadron of Marines.
Like worse than like a haunted house you'd see around here for Halloween. Like I'd be more impressed by what they do for that than this movie. I don't know. Like, I mean, it's low budget. It's elevated for a Sci-Fi Channel movie, but that's a weak compliment because that's about where this resides. You know, it's like one step above those like Avalanche style, like spider tornado monkeys from Mars. You know. I remember doing
it's reminiscent of the era when like a TV movie was an actual movie and not something you watch ironically.
Well, it's funny enough because, you know, I'm heartbroken and I don't even want to get into it because I'll need to drink. But, you know, Dune just got moved, and it was like the last savior this year for cinema, really, in the theaters. You know, James Bond moving was like, oh shit. And, like, that was directly related to all the Regal cinemas shutting down. Dune was it, and now that's moved. So, you know, everyone's just decided the year is over. And it made me revisit the Sci-Fi Channel series of Dune. And that's a bummer because it's really good attempts, but the budget is so cripplingly bad. Like, this reminds me of that era of filmmaking, like 2000, 2001, back when Sci-Fi Channel had a lot of people who were passionate about science fiction, and it wasn't SCYFY because like whatever they're doing now with just garbage films that just get dumped on it and cops reruns. There was a legitimate attempt to make interesting sci-fi, but with no money, you know. And this is interesting because Roger Corman made a whole career out of this and other people's careers, And it was always cheesy, but there was something earnest about it where they made it work. And for some reason, they're not making it work with the type of budget that they should be able to make it work. Like whatever they spend on this, like I'm not hyping us up, but I guarantee if you and I tried to make a horror film with the money that they spent on this, I think we could do better. So why didn't they do better? You know, like why is there such a cheapness to it? That's a never, I never understand. Like work with your means. Like a story like this, like light it darker, have it grungier. Like the first Doom movie, and I think we talked about it, like has the same pitfalls as this, but it does have like good makeup. You know, but probably quadruple what this budget was easily though, but still like they worked with their limitations better than this one tried to be ambitious, but you just end up with corridors that are lit differently.
Yeah. You can definitely see how they wrote a story for a certain amount of money and then got a third of that money and then still tried to do the movie.
And it's like, well, we don't want to rewrite the script. That'd be hard.
That'll take a couple weeks. No, let's just start shooting.
We don't have time for that.
I mean, you could also like. I thought the opening, like, made it look ambitious, like where they were on the ship and like that looked like a pretty decent set. You know, the ship model looked good, and then basically as soon as they landed, it was like it went from a $25 million movie to like a $2 million movie. And they're like, we blew all our budget on the first 10 minutes.
It's guilty of Red Letter Media and one of their like best of the worst things. They broke this down a lot better than I'm about to, but it's like those things they would do in the 80s. Like they would spend the money on like the first 10 minutes of the movie because that's what the investor would watch, you know, and be like, all right, yeah, it's good. And then the rest of it just kind of peters out. That's what this was. Like they blew their load really quick at the beginning of like, here, look, we've got effects, and now we're gonna pad it out with 50 minutes of hallways.
Yeah, and I would say too, like I thought the opening where they're going through the portal was pretty effective. Like, that guy, coming through and then like saying like, basically maybe it wasn't as instantaneous as we thought it was or something like that. And
I do love
really alluding to, a kind of event horizon, like hell dimension that like drives you insane or something.
Sure.
And then that whole thing just really peters out and just loses steam just so quickly.
I do love I agree with you. I like that setup, but the execution was a little silly because like he's in the foreground, you see him behind, and like, yeah, he's good. And then it cuts back and he's bleeding from the eyes and he has claws. It's like, was that not immediately apparent? Like maybe go check on the guy before you start high-fiving. Like that was a little strange. But
that was strange. I thought the cluelessness of the Earth scientists, like throughout the entire thing, like seemed really silly. Like,
and that was weird too. I didn't realize that the other guy with the mascara on was in Nevada for a minute. It looked like they were in the same room in the opening bit, or maybe I just was already bored and I wasn't paying that much attention. It just didn't. I didn't realize he was in Nevada until like 10 minutes later, and it's like, oh, they should have made that more apparent.
Yeah. It was also what I thought was also strange was how much this did feel like a remake of the other Doom movie, like in some respects, like the way that it doesn't really establish the characters that well, and then also like doesn't know, like the sense of like you don't know who you're supposed to care about for a while.
Yeah,
like when you had The Rock and Carl Urban. Is it Cal Urban?
The Rock and Carl Urban version did the homework assignment, and this guy cheated off of it.
Yeah,
it's like it's
a copy
similar,
of a copy. It doesn't.
But
really
what's he supposed to do? Like that's so interesting. Like here's Doom, but you can only use these elements, and like.
I mean, but that's I'm less concerned about that because like I think there's a way to do it. It's just well, we can get into that when we get into that section. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about this movie? I want to talk about the fucking imps. Because, like,
I love how we sit on them long enough to realize how badly rendered the fireballs are before they throw them. I give them points for even attempting that. When you don't
have an effects budget, you cut quick so that but it's just like,
look at how shitty this looks.
It's just like this is definitely somebody got Premiere over the weekend and was like playing around.
No, seriously. It's like if you came to me right now and said, hey, we want a BFG effect tonight. Like what I could come up with is what this had. And it's like, it should be better than that.
But also, like, so clearly how they could only afford like 3 suits. And so there aren't any more than 2 aliens on the screen at any one, or demons or
Well,
whatever.
that's what's interesting because it sets the expectations so low. Like when you do cut to the onslaught she faces at the end, it's like, oh wow, like this got a little ambitious all of a sudden. It's like the beginning and the end is where the money went. They had to fill out the middle.
But even like, so the end you're talking about is like she goes through. Okay, just to like wrap up because I don't want to be dancing around this, but like goes to save some scientists, I guess. Whole
The
squadron
ex-boyfriend from
killed.
10 years ago.
She did something bad that let a terrorist loose so that everybody hates her. It barely registers as a plot point. I still don't really understand what she did.
I just watched it 3 hours ago and I forgot that detail.
But anyway, point is that there's like a lead scientist, and he's been, you know, experimenting with these portals. Turns out, surprise, surprise, he's actually like infected by some demons. So he's actually the bad guy. She kills him and has to kill her like ex-boyfriend or something too, which they also try and cram in as a love interest. And then he's immediately killed. And then she like goes and goes into the portal, blows up a big demon very easily. Like it doesn't, like if this is the technology that they have, it's not really a problem that the demons are coming.
No,
like it will be able to destroy them very easily. But anyway, then she gets to a portal on Earth, is nonchalant for about half a minute, says she wants some vodka, and then the demons start coming, and then the movie ends.
Just cut the black. We're not going to.
So like, oh no, I guess they were really hoping, I guess, for a sequel or something. But anyway, so that's the plot, as it were. I don't know. It's very generic. You know, there's so much cribbing of like aliens and a little bit of like Event Horizon, but the thing it made me think of the most was Mystery Science Theater's commentary for Space Mutiny. Because
so I was just going to say, it is
how much
so
they turned a water
Mutiny.
treatment plant into a spaceship. Or moon base, if you will.
It is Event Horizon meets Space Mutiny. If somebody asked me to describe it, that's how I would pair that. God, I'd rather watch Space Mutiny. That was a little more. I just love how it ripped off all its space battle stuff from Battlestar Galactica. No one cared.
They just used the same assets.
That's fine. I'm going to repeat myself for the last one. Like, I just think the way to make the Doom property is to go full cranked / hardcore Henry with it. It's like that's what the property, that's what its fan base wants. You know, just
I mean, it should be John Wick in Mars with demons. Like that's basic. Yep. So we'll go into our how do we make it better section, because there really isn't much to say about this movie. Don't watch it unless you're like with a group of friends drinking, and even then
I give it 2 imps out of 10.
Yeah, there we go. Two imps is, I guess, pretty good.
I'd give it 3, but there's not enough money for them to have 3 costumes, so we'll just do 2.
No, they had 3 costumes. It's just one of them was like a leaping one, and the other ones were like standing. So they could only have that one once. Okay,
it's not even the worst movie I've seen this year, though.
Okay, but
for video game adaptations,
sure? Wait, are you sure though?
I'm trying to think. No, I was about to lambast it, and I can't think of it. And it was a couple of years ago. I know I've seen something worse. This might be the worst one I've seen.
I was trying to think.
I just was bored. I was never angry. I was never like, "Oh, this is bad." I was just like, "Oh, hurry up."
I would say like that's the consistent thing for the past 3 movies we've watched, both Silent Hills and the first Doom, is just like, okay, pretty interesting first 10 minutes, first 10, 15 minutes, maybe, and then just boring for another hour. And just goes nowhere, doesn't do anything. So these are not good recommendations for Halloween, basically.
No.
Unless you are...
We picked all the worst ones.
Yeah, it's too bad we'd already done Resident Evil. That was a big miscalculation on our part.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so 2 out of 10 from both of us. 2 imps out of 10. Okay, so how could we have made this better? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, again, like if you walked into a cocaine-riddled executive's office right now and said what you just said, John Wick with demons, he would have given you a check for $50 million, and that's all it needs to be. You know, it needs to be, those space demons took my dog, and you just go fucking ape shit on Mars and you eat popcorn and blast.
Yeah,
heavy metal.
mean, you could put a story around it of like, somebody, the president is stranded on Mars, and we got to send in, former convict Doom Gee, and he's got to like,
it would be
bust
fun
away through it.
Just to keep the consistent theme of being derivative going. It would be fun for Doom to be like From Dusk Till Dawn. Like maybe it's a totally different movie and you just flip the switch halfway through and then there's no dialogue and only fighting for like 45 minutes. And it's just get out of hell before this bomb explodes. And then boom,
definitely. I mean, it could be like, this could work too. Like, the Martian experimental research facility / like, prison or something, and like they unleash hell on Mars and all the prisoners are killed except the last one who was a political prisoner or something, so that he's not like a psychopath murderer because you have to root for him, and he's got to like get out to the last ship before the whole base blows up or something. Like, there are ways to do it, and I don't know why they always go with what feels like a prequel to the game of like, how did this person wind up alone in this situation? And we start with the squad and then go from there. But who cares? Like, nobody needs that part. I don't think we even need the Space Marine part. We just need on Mars, alone, fighting demons. And that's a pretty good movie.
Hell, like, again, to crib from something else, like do it like Half-Life. Maybe it's just this kind of meek scientist who finds out he's a badass by escaping this facility where the portals open to gate to hell, and he, by the end of it, he's like a serious take on Ash from Evil Dead. Like someone's like, oh, I can't believe this is our hero, and by the end it turns out. I'd like to see Brandon Cronenberg direct Doom. David Cronenberg's son, like, he does a lot of really creepy.
What else has he done? Do you know?
He has a movie just came out. I haven't had a chance to see it, called Possessor, and it looks really awesome, like really creepy makeup, and it's about an assassin that kind of quantum leaps into people that does the murders. Like, well, she'll be in that body to do the murder. It looks really twisted, and I can't wait to see it. But he did another movie. Like, he definitely is his father's son. I'm trying to think of the big one he did. He did one about getting sick that was just so gross. Antiviral. Antiviral is a really creepy, icky movie, and I want that. I want the demons. I want there to be a visceral Cronenberg reaction to what you're seeing, instead of just a guy in a suit going, like, make it hell. Do like Event Horizon, but now and harder, and like that's what I want to see. Like, make it a horror. Like, not these movies aren't scary. Like, make it a scary movie. That'd be fun.
Yeah, I agree. Like, they lead too heavily on the action instead of the horror, I guess. Which I guess is kind of.
Well, I mean, because you don't think in the original games, it's just pew 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 pew. But like, they're monsters. Like, make it monsters. Make it scary.
I mean, they leaned, like, in the later games, they leaned on the horror aspect. Like, I remember when I think Bethesda's, or was it Doom 3? I can't remember. Where like you could only have like the gun or the flashlight out.
Yeah, Doom 3, and they later patched it out because people bitched. But it was an interesting gameplay. But they were trying because you had to, like, you had to decide, like, do I want to see? Doom 3 really was an odd shakeup of the style of Doom that we know, and that's what makes the two recent Dooms great, because it's a combination of everything. It's the twitch shooting you love from the first game, but going in a more cinematic direction, which is what they were trying to do with Doom 3, but didn't do very well.
So I'll also say, like, since we're kind of talking about what could have made it better, I I honestly think that the main character, Amy Manson, did a pretty good job. I think if you had the same budget or were going for a similar kind of like female action hero vibe, I think she would do fine. But if you were going for the more traditional kind of, you know, male protagonist that the games have, can you think of anybody that you would want to see in it?
Ironically, like I just want to see. I don't want to see Carl Urban from the last one. I want to see Carl Urban from Dread.
Yeah, I was thinking of that too. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if we brought that up in the last podcast or not, but like that's the Doom character you need. I don't know. Like John Cena could be interesting because he's just such a meathead.
Yeah,
you know him with the helmet. Like
I always think of him as more of like a Duke Nukem kind of guy, but
I can see that too. With the sunglasses and everything. Oh, totally. He would be. But the funny thing is, each of these games that would get a movie because he'd be a good Far Cry guy. He'd be a good Doom guy. Hell, put him in Spartan armor. He could be Master Chief.
He could be Master Chief. What do you think about Daniel Craig?
Yeah, that'd be fun. That'd be interesting.
I just kind of can picture his face like in the little like, you know, console area where you like show how like beat up you are, you know, like
HP's at 100.
His face just matches pretty well to that guy.
I can see it. He doesn't strike me as having as much of a sense of humor to be in something like this, but he's wonderful in Knives Out.
I think you're wrong. Have you ever seen Logan Lucky?
Yeah. He was great in that. Yeah,
he's great. Do you think Doom kind of has to be? I think you're right. I think Doom has to be a little over the top. And like not
just a little self-aware,
like a little
not like silly, but
like so much that it's funny, like so kind of like insane that it's because like, you know, the original Doom, like there is no logic to like the level construction of like why where the demons are. Geez. They just keep putting in harder and more challenging and more things that you have. When they introduce
the BFG, spoiler alert for Doom Eternal, but it's been out almost a year now. But when you get the BFG 9000, it's rigged up to this giant cannon. You shoot a hole in Mars, then rip out the gun and keep it for yourself, and then you climb into a torpedo like launcher and shoot yourself down into a city in the middle of Mars. Like that just happens, and you're just supposed to go, of course. That makes sense. He'll be fine. He's Doom guy.
Yeah.
So as long as you just embrace that type of wackiness, it can work. But you got to be confident in doing it. I think. I don't know.
I always think of like these like I think it was Lockdown with Guy Pearce, and Guy Pearce might be okay at this too. I don't know.
Oh, Guy Pearce would be fun. Yeah, Lockdown was a major ripoff of like several things, wasn't it? What did that really rip off?
So what? Yeah, like Doom isn't, you know.
It's true.
But Lockdown was basically Die Hard in space, or like
that's what it was.
From Precinct.
Escape 99. From
Assault on Precinct 99, something. Like
I don't know if he was serious, but they always joked around that Escape from LA's follow-up would be Escape from the Moon.
Yeah,
and it really feels like somewhat.
Was it the
Moon? Or Escape from Earth? I'm sorry, but like Earth was the prison, and Moon is where all the like aristocrats lived.
Yeah.
But whatever that plot like synopsis was, they ripped off for that movie. I think is where they were getting at. But
I do remember the funny thing about Lockdown, because it is also that weird thing, is like the way they escape is they just jump out of the space station. It's been a while since I've seen it, and then just plummet to Earth. Like, and I think that's how Gravity ends too.
I was just about to say Gravity did the same thing.
Yeah. So maybe it's not that silly. I don't know. No, it's still silly.
It's pretty silly. Neil deGrasse Tyson would have a stroke with both of them. So,
so we got into this a little bit. We're kind of jumping all over our different segments here. But what's your relationship to the game? So what have you?
I'm trying to think what
did you start? I know we probably talked about it a little bit, but
so it's a few weeks
memories that have come up.
I'm just curious if I contradict myself at all, but it was just that game where like we had a Mac and I was like, oh man, but I don't know if I went into it as much nowadays I'm really into it. Like it was just funny. Like I was so looking forward to Doom Eternal, and then the vibe was weird with the world ending. But now I'm really into playing it, and I really like the style of shooting where there's a lot of strategy going on for to be, you know, quote unquote a dumb first person shooter. Like the way they structured the new one, like you're not even thinking, it all becomes instinct. Like these guys have blue shields, so you need your plasma rifle, and these guys, you know, can dodge your shotgun, you can do this, and you can't use a BFG, and this guy just makes him angry, and you're juggling all these things where it's kind of like chess, despite being a meathead shooter game with heavy metal and Doritos. Like it is a very well thought out, strategically oriented shooter, which is fun, you know. So
like there's more strategy to it than like the first couple games.
I mean, the first
like,
one was just
whatever
mash the shotgun. Whatever happens, don't think. Just try to stay out of the news because they're gonna blame whatever you did on this game. But yeah, so that's my relationship with it. It's a fun property. I love that the director's name is Stratton. Marty Stratton is the guy who does it, and that's cool. I wish I was related. I'm not. I want to see where they can take it. It's just cool because it's all of a sudden since Doom 3, and I guess going back to Doom 1, it's always been an envelope pushing graphical game. Like, you know, the big thing all the nerds love right now, and me too, is HDR ray tracing. Like that's the like a role of ray tracing. HDR is just a fun component of it too, but this game doesn't even use ray tracing yet, you know. But it has such interesting organic looking textures, and you know, these new graphics cards have come out, like they're pushing, you know, hundreds of frames a second above 4K. You know, I think there's something where it's running in 8K at 100 frames or something stupid like that. And
wow,
I like following where that goes. Like what Doom Eternal is now. You know, it's no slouch. I'm playing on my Xbox One X and it's in 4K and 60 frames. I know that's pedestrian in the PC world, but I love it when I'm just sitting on the couch. But in like 4 years, that same game could be like really pushing the envelope because they just can unlock more and more. They are going to patch in ray tracing. So seeing all that stuff evolve with it is cool. And, you know, so the next Doom is just going to push the envelope even more. But I wonder if like we'll ever get photorealistic. You know what I mean? Like where is the cutoff point with video games? We've probably touched on this before too, but it can add more. You can get more textures. I mean, look at Red Dead Redemption 2. I don't know where you go. I can't isolate anything in that game where I'm like, oh, that could get better. Like, where do you go from there? Will there always be this kind of animation? Like, the best looking video game is Pixar quality, or do we get to like, holy shit, are you Tom Cruise running on that train? Oh, it's a game. Like, are we gonna confuse them for movies at any point? I don't know.
Yeah, I do wonder, like, how much realism do we want? Because there is certain elements and certain games that I appreciate, like the lack of realism and the cartoon kind of, like, you know, I think there is a minor resurgence in like the 8-bit art style, and a lot of nostalgia, but also appreciation for that way that looks, you know, like Mega Man, but which I just think looks cool. Always.
I'm retro and I'm stuck in that. I know it's a very hipster thing now to make everything pixel art, but to me, that I'm always going to be fond of it. Hell, I just got a VMU loaded with video games that I've been playing Mario on. Like, that tells me I'm playing a video game and I'm happy. You know what I mean? Like, some games have turned into jobs. I feel like I'm like at work playing some of these games, and it's like,
well, like the flight simulator. You know, you're just going out and
exactly.
Oh man, that is therapeutic in its own route. By 8, or else we're gonna get docked.
Just abusing coffee. Just I need more Adderall to get this flight going. That's its own style, though, for sure.
So I want to talk about my experience with the game, but I did also want to mention it's interesting how, like, when you look at like the 8-bit games, like, they're still playable and they look good, you know, like you're never like thrown off by the graphics. But when you started getting in that mid tier, you know, like PlayStation 1,
those don't hold up as
like,
well.
You can't. It's like impossible to really want to play. Like, I remember watching like when we were doing Blood Rain, like watching like game footage of it, and like this looks terrible. Like,
Yeah, at the time it was
why did
great, but oh my
anybody
god, you
enjoy
can't go back.
playing this? Yeah.
No, you can't go back to it at all. The only game I give a pass to because I love it so much is Soul Reaver. And Soul Reaver is just right in the midst of that like early 3D game design where just horrible textures, blocky characters, screwed up analog sticks, you're pushing crates. But I can still play that one. But a lot of those 3D games from that era, I can't really. And that's why people, shit on remasters today. But I'm looking forward to buying the new Prince of Persia or the remaster of Prince of Persia. Like, I don't know if I'd have fun going back to the original, but this one takes into account, like Tony Hawk. The new Tony Hawk plays just like the original games. They were religious to the original code of not changing it, so it felt the same. But it's beautiful and the controls feel good. And like, I remaster all those games because they don't stand the test of time like the old 2D games do. And then, real quick, before you give more impressions on Doom, I was just going to say another thing that I agree with you is like when I realized I don't necessarily want more realism was the shift from Grand Theft Auto 3 to 4. Grand Theft Auto 3 was just pass the controller with my roommates and like get a rocket launcher and blow up tanks.
Yeah.
And I remember Grand Theft Auto 4, the first time I ran out in the street and was like, ha! And I shot a guy with the shotgun and he slumped over in the steering wheel and he like slid to the side of the road and hit a light pole.
Too real.
And like the horns honking. I was like, oh. And I stole his car and I'm like following the laws of the like it was just too much for me. It was too creepy.
No, I think I remember because when Grand Theft Auto 3 came out, like, and everybody would just love the like really at least the first like sandbox game that I can really remember. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
Where you could just do anything. That was like most of the game was just like getting a rocket launcher, stealing a car, blowing up, trying to get the cops to chase you. All of that.
I still remember having this little notepad full of cheat codes and like just putting them all in and going nuts.
And you could do that up until like that was enjoyable up until I think around Grand Theft Auto 3. Like the last like San Andreas was like still like a little I don't remember doing that as much in San Andreas, and maybe that's just because I got older. But maybe it was the weightlifting mechanic that they put in, and it's just like, oh yeah, this is like a person now.
It's funny because you had to go to the gym, and if you ate too much, you got fat.
Yeah,
and like there's all kinds of stuff going on.
And like when it got to Grand Theft Auto 4, it was just like I'm just gonna play this game. Same with Grand Theft Auto 5. Like I just didn't. I don't know if it was again like that amount of mayhem and that freedom had just kind of gotten not as enjoyable, or that it was too realistic or something. But I remember like starting to do like some of that like random indiscriminate kind of like murder and mayhem stuff, and it's just like I'll just play the missions. Like that's okay. But with Doom, so I'll just real quick because like my experience with Doom is much more tied into being like 9 and 10 when maybe I shouldn't have been playing it, but whatever. And I would play it in the office that was set up at my house, the computer room. Remember when we had computer rooms? The room that the computer was in?
I remember those days.
And so I would play Doom 2, and I probably didn't get very far, but I would play that. And it's also tied like inextricably, I think that's the right word, with Star Wars Dark Forces, because that was around the same time, and I would just swap back and forth playing those two games. And Dark Forces is a little bit more sophisticated in that there are sort of puzzles, but essentially they're the same game where it's just walking through, getting different guns, fighting more challenging enemies.
Do you remember when it because Doom set the standard in such a way, like any shooter was just called a Doom clone for like 10 years? Like I don't think that stigma went away until Half-Life or Quake. I don't know. Like it was just like if you had a gun and you ran forward, you're a Doom clone. And I just think that's so funny because it's its own genre now, obviously. So,
and it's also we never had money to buy like a ton of games. So like Doom was like one of them that I played, and like up until then I'd only played like side scrollers. Like I think it was my first person shooter. I don't know how many had come before then because I hadn't played any of them, but yeah, I don't know. It's kind of just stuck in my mind, like that's those stupid little imps, and then like sort of walking, but not really. And you're like,
yeah. My PC gaming was Myst, or like all these crazy shareware discs, my dad's coworker would give us. Like I don't think I ever met this guy. But he was like, "Oh, you've got a son? How old is he here?" And he'd give my dad these stacks of floppies, and I'd go home like, "Oh, like Ultima, sweet," and I'd play, like that style of like really simplistic 2D sprite-based role-playing game was where I was at on the computer gaming back then. So Doom was a revelation. I just couldn't believe like what that game was doing.
So yeah, be better, movies.
This is a technical difficulties production.